Hey, thanks for checking out this video that's going to review Fallout 76 in 2024. If you like my content, consider subscribing. Take a moment to think about the most problematic and terrible video game releases of the last decade. Without Googling or doing any research, I can name a bunch off the top of my head. Some of them go on to become successes, but they never truly shake off that bad first impression. Let's start with some of the more memorable quote-unquote successes of the post-release improvements. While Destiny was mostly bug-free and in a technically good state on release, it was clear that something was wrong at Bungie. Large chunks of the story were either missing or stitched together into some kind of Frankenstein's monster of a narrative. Destiny was a game that made me vow to never buy a game again on release. I would always wait until a few patches were out before I dropped my hard-earned cash on a new release. And while Destiny would eventually go on to become acclaimed by many players after a slew of DLCs and a sequel, I always remember it as the game that could have been. Cyberpunk 2077 launched in a rough state on console, to the point where CD Projekt Red, the golden child of video game developers, lost most of the goodwill they had accumulated from The Witcher 3, arguably one of the greatest games ever released. It took several years of patches and a DLC called Phantom Liberty before it was generally agreed that it was a good game. Possibly one of the most famous cases for a game releasing broken and lacking features was No Man's Sky. I followed the release of this one pretty closely at the time, since the hype surrounding it was at insane levels. And then it came out and the response to it flooded YouTube. Broken and bereft of content, made worse by the silence of the developers, Hello Games, to respond to the controversy of its release. Looking back, it's hard to imagine the difference the updates made to No Man's Sky, and it became the poster child for a bad released game redeeming itself over time. But just as there are numerous examples of games patching themselves to functionality and adding more content, there are others that release bad, stay bad, and then die off silently. BioWare used to be the studio that could do no wrong. Sure, they had a few rocky launches and some missteps. I'm looking at Mass Effect 3's ending, Dragon Age Inquisition's bugs, and Mass Effect Andromeda's wacky facial expressions and odd design decisions. But BioWare was relying on that old BioWare magic to pull them through with Anthem. Then the game came out and it was terrible. Loading screens everywhere, a lackluster story, and an RPG mechanic that turned out were fake, as you could play with a starting weapon and it was equal to the legendaries you could get at the end of the game. They did the same exact damage. Not to mention the countless bugs, the crashes, and the alleged console bricking problems. BioWare promised to fix it, and they did do a few patches, but then they realized that nobody was going to play it and canned the whole thing. I picked up Anthem about a month after launch for $5, and it felt like it was priced appropriately. I'm not a big fan of Arcane Studio games, but I could appreciate what they were going for. The combat in Prey and Deathloop just didn't do it for me, but I loved the premise and the world they built. When they announced Redfall, a co-op shooter that had you fighting vampires, I was pretty concerned. Turns out they did drop the ball pretty hard. The launch was terrible, with bugs and poor combat and missing content. Even after some patches and DLC, there just wasn't enough to carry it the distance, and the studio that made it, Arcane Austin, eventually closed. Alright, so why am I talking about all these games and their rocky launches? Because in my opinion, Fallout 76 is the granddaddy of failure to launch. It had all the problems you would expect from a Bethesda game, the bugs, the glitches, the crashes, combined with the lacking content, microtransactions, and a PR nightmare that just kept getting worse. But that was in November of 2018, nearly 6 years ago. This video intends to answer the question, is Fallout 76 worth playing in 2024? Spoiler, the answer is yes.
War never changes. In 1776, this great nation accepted that armed conflict was the only way to preserve our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If our founding fathers could only see us now.
Let's give a little background. The year is 2018. It was a banger of a year for game releases. Red Dead Redemption 2, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, God of War, Spider-Man for PlayStation 4, just hit after hit. There was a game that was soon going to be released that had so much hype that the internet could barely contain it. It had 16 times the detail, an open world multiplayer game from Bethesda, the makers of Skyrim and Fallout 4. When Fallout 76 eventually released in November of 2018, it was meme-worthy. It had a release so bad that it eventually became the standard for terrible game launches. No one wanted their game compared to Fallout 76. It was so bad that when other games launched in a similar state, like Anthem or Cyberpunk, they were labeled Anthem 76 and Cyberpunk 2076. It checked all the marks for a bad game. It was buggy, its characters T-posed constantly, characters fell through the world and the walls, quests didn't work, enemy AI was beyond awful, players lost their characters, players accessed other players' worlds and characters and inventories. There are a ton of videos on YouTube about 76 on launch, and I still watch them occasionally. Now, in 2024, I played Fallout 76 on the Xbox Series X through Game Pass, and I gotta say, it's come a long way since its launch, but it still has so much further to go. Let's move into updates and patches. Before I start with the current technical state of Fallout 76, I want to talk about the slew of patches and updates that Fallout 76 has received so that you can understand just how far this game has come in almost 6 years. As of the writing of this review in June of 2024, there have been 19 major updates and expansions for Fallout 76. That isn't patches, by the way. These are updates with significant changes, upgrades, and content being added. 19 updates. Here are all of them on screen in a single image. I'm going to go through all of them, but first, let's start with what Fallout 76 launched with. One of the biggest things were that there were no NPCs on launch, just notes, holotapes, and other players. No communities existed except for those that players built, and the content that was there was lacking and bug-ridden. The main quest involved following your Vault Overseer's holotapes across this new world in an attempt to stop the Scorched, a new form of enemy that's sort of like feral ghouls, except they can use weapons and they spread their illness like a virus. Some people enjoyed this sparse, characterless main quest, while others found it empty. It sort of reminded me of Fallout 4 without the main storyline, and said you were just doing side quests or camp building. But then came the updates, and we're going to go through each one of them, and I'm going to give a brief overview of what they brought to the game. Wild Appalachia, the first update to Fallout 76. It added some new world events that players could participate in. There was brewing and distilling, and a new survival mode along with some small camp updates. It wasn't a lot, but it was something. Then came Nuclear Winter. It came out about 3 months later. It was another small update that gave players a new vault to explore, Vault 51, which is filled with Scorch to fight, and a crazy AI that's looking for a new Overseer. I played this quest and it's just fine, with lots of enemies, and the vault is pretty big to explore. It also gave an event that involved Vault 94 that was kind of like an endgame player raid. Since that update, that raid doesn't exist anymore, the vault is just open for everyone to explore. Then there's the Wastelanders update. This was the third major update, and this is when I remember people taking notice of the changes happening to Fallout 76. This was like when the first Destiny game came out with the Taken King. It finally added NPCs. There was raiders and settlers, along with their new settlements and quests to go along with it. Things were starting to improve with Fallout 76, and at the time, I recall people saying Fallout 76 is actually pretty good now. The Legendary Run, this is when seasons were started, with a unique quest and rewards to get. Even now, seasons are still a thing, and a lot of collectibles and cosmetics are locked behind it. One Wasteland for All, this one was just a couple of new missions, but it was more of a balancing update that made enemies scale with the player so you weren't running into crazy high-level monsters right next to these level 1 trash mobs. Then there's Steel Dawn. I love the Brotherhood of Steel. Well, I love the sci-fi aspect of it. You have people in power armor searching for lost technology to fight the evil of the Scourge and ghouls and other things that threaten humanity. It's a lot like Warhammer 40k in a way. I really enjoyed the quests that came with this update. The Brotherhood of Steel came to Appalachia, and they aren't prepared for the Scorch. There are more quests with the Brotherhood in later updates, but this one has them facing off against super mutants at first. You join them as an initiate, and of course, you get to do most of the work while they watch safely from their fort. Locked and Loaded. Alright, this update is a little light, and it's mostly about cosmetics and camp upgrades. You can make shelters in the game after this one, which are kind of like separate worlds that can hold all your loot and protect it behind a giant door. Oh, and it gave you loadouts so you can easily swap between them. Steel Rain is a continuation of the Steel Dawn update. When you play the Brotherhood of Steel missions today, they blend together more since you have all the updates at the same time. This one continues the story of the Brotherhood of Steel, along with legendary item crafting and more legendary power armor to get. The quests involve choosing a side in an eternal conflict taking place in the local chapter of the Brotherhood. Essentially, the Brotherhood are in over their head. The Scorched and Super Mutants are beating the hell out of them, and one side wants to focus on the mandate of getting technology and kicking ass, while the other side wants to help the people around them, sharing their technology and supplies for the good of everyone in Appalachia. Oh, and then there's some scientists experimenting with FEV to make super mutants. Fallout Worlds. This update lets you host a private world, but FYI, you do need Fallout First, the subscription service, to use that feature. There's also some updates to dailies and a little bit of this and that. Night of the Moth. This is a small update that added the event The Mothman Equinox, and some quality of life changes to the settings, nothing major. Okay, let's talk about the Mothman. You can find these guys in the game along with this crazy cult that worships them. If you do find them in the wild, they look at you with these menacing red eyes, and they disappear into black smoke. Or they sometimes attack you, and they are pretty powerful. Invaders from Beyond. Fallout always had this weird stuff in it, and this update introduced some of it to Fallout 76. There's these creatures called Flatwoods monsters that you can find in the wild, but this update added an alien invasion event to the public world that you can join when it was in season, where aliens would invade. Test your metal, some small balance changes and seasonal stuff along with 3 new public events. The Pit. Alright, this update is on the same levels as Wastelanders or Steel Dawn or Steel Rain. You get to go to a whole new area outside of the regular world. Expeditions are sort of like strikes in Destiny, where you go to a place, do a thing, and you can repeat it for loot. This one takes place in Pittsburgh, or the Pit, where 2 groups are fighting and you join the conflict. There's more quests to do, vendors to see, and loot to pick up. The Pit was pretty fun and was expanded upon in later updates. You may be familiar with the Pit already from Fallout 3 as well. Nuka World on Tour. This is the iconic Nuka-Cola update. It's one of the things unique to the world of Fallout, and this update added a new season of content and 4 new events that revolved around the beverage, along with some camp stuff. Mutation Invasion. More public event stuff and daily ops, along with some mutations for those events to spice things up. Once in a Blue Moon. This update did a lot of quality of life improvements, but it also expanded one of the NPC groups, the Blue Ridge Caravan Company. It also added the Blue Devil, the creature that's in the artwork. Atlantic City, Boardwalk Paradise, and America's Playground. AC, baby, it added the gambling town as an expedition with new quests and activities. It was pretty great, and I enjoyed Atlantic City quite a bit more than the Pit. This is actually 2 updates, as the content of Atlantic City just kept rolling in. You can pick the area that you want to do when you go on your expedition. Skyline Valley. This is the most recent update, number 19. This adds an entirely new area to the map in the southern Skyline Valley, and a new vault with quests, Vault 63. This one's pretty big, as it also brings a lot of new quest locations and places to explore. Alright, that's it. That's all the updates. But you gotta be asking, did 19 updates really improve the game that much? Well, let's go right into the technical review of Fallout 76. As I said earlier, I played 76 on Xbox Series X. The frame rate is pretty solid, staying at 60 FPS without many slowdowns. But even 19 updates and 6 years didn't fix all the bugs. I gotta say, Fallout 76 in its current state is similar to Fallout 4 or Skyrim in terms of bugs, glitches, and problems. Let's list off the things I found and will detract from your experience. AI. The AI is still hot garbage. They will stand still and shoot you if they can, or run at you very quickly in melee. This is a similar problem with all the Fallout games. The shooting just sucks ass. That was a necessity in the other Fallout games, since the enemy design and gunplay just didn't mesh right. A shooting game should have enemies that are fun to shoot. Fallout enemies come in 2 types. Stand in front of you and shoot at you, or too small or narrow to hit correctly. But we can talk a bit more of that in the gameplay section, but for now, just know that the AI still isn't great. They get stuck on objects a lot, meaning you can cheese the bigger and harder enemies. They also lock onto you with pinpoint accuracy when they see you, meaning I can barely hit them from my distance, but they can Gatling gun me from across a room. Bugs. I'm convinced that Bethesda is completely unable to fix Fallout 76 bugs. Whether it's a problem with their engine or the way they just design their games, every Bethesda game is a bug-ridden mess. Get used to seeing characters sliding across the ground, enemies doing weird, janky things, and quests just simply not working half the time. It's better than it was at launch for sure, and it's probably on similar levels as Fallout 4, but the bugs and glitches are still here. If that's a deal breaker for you, don't play Fallout 76. I don't mind the bugs for the most part, but they are often quest breaking, forcing you to exit and reload the game, meaning that you're gonna have to play entire quests again when an NPC just refuses to move or do an action that they need to do to continue it, or even talk to you. Crashes. I put over 40 hours into Fallout 76, and it crashed more than a half dozen times. And I mean hard crashes that shut the game off and booted me to the main Xbox home screen. Then there were the network issues that kicked me off the server and to the main page as well. Look, I'm kind of forgiving on the bugs, but hard crashes are frustrating as hell, especially when you need to complete long sections of a quest to progress it. It doesn't autosave your progress when you crash when you're in interiors. Your inventory and level will stay, but the quest itself will reset. But I must say that overall, Fallout 76 does run a lot better. The world, it looks a lot nicer, and it's more alive than when the game first came out. But there's still so much that needs to be done. Let's put the bugs and crashes aside for a moment. How about just fixing the UI? 19 updates and the inventory screen still isn't really suitable for a looter shooter. Seeing your inventory is like reading an Excel spreadsheet. Everything is the same color and the font can be really tiny at times. And your carry weight sucks for a game that encourages you to loot everything, since you need these materials and supplies to repair your equipment, buy or craft ammo, and build your camp. This is the kind of stuff that would be fixed by a mod, even though the modders really shouldn't have to. Let's talk about the graphics. Fallout 76 looks better than Fallout 4. That isn't saying much though. That's like saying 360p is better than 240p. Both are still not acceptable when 1080, 1440, and 4K exist. The characters in Fallout 76 are pretty ugly, plain and simple. They also tend to blend together in their looks. I've found that half the female NPCs in the world look like they could be sisters. The guns in your hands look like crap. They don't look like something you would want to shoot. They look like something you picked up off the ground and was forced to use. Which I mean, thematically, most of the time that's true. The world is a lot more colorful than Fallout 3, with significantly less brown and green, but it's still not on the level of, say, The Witcher 3 or a Borderlands game. It's a post-apocalyptic wasteland, so it might be unfair to ask much of it, but Fallout 76 does shake things up. Rather than having town after town of ruined buildings followed by brown hills, there are trees and mutated swamps and things like that switch up the environment. The world is massive and each section of it has a different look and feel. It's still not beautiful, but it is an improvement. Let's move on to the story. The story section is going to be pretty short since I already talked about it through the updates. There isn't much of a story in Fallout 76. This is like if you had Fallout 4 and just ripped the storyline of finding your missing son out of it and just let you wander the wasteland doing side quests and building stuff. There's no emergency that needs you to do something right now. You're not the hero of the wasteland. You're just some guy amongst a bunch of other people that left Vault 76 and are just trying to survive. However, a lot of the side missions are pretty interesting. The Brotherhood of Steel quest is good, pitting you against monsters and finding out what's going on with the super mutants of Appalachia. Then there's the Overseer that's been expanded from being just holotapes across the world to being a real NPC that sort of is kind of guiding you. She has you look for a vaccine to the Scorch virus, the plague that's changing people into feral ghoul type creatures. Then you work with the raiders and settlers, ultimately picking a group to rob a vault full of gold with. Then there's everyone's favorite, the Enclave, where you get the ability to launch nukes to draw out high-level enemies, or just grief other players by blocking access to their camp or a main mission hub. I had to avoid required quest areas at times because somebody launched a nuke at it. Overall, Fallout 76 is your story. What do you want to do in the wasteland? Do you want to just kill stuff, build stuff, discover stuff? The world is open to you right from the start and you can do whatever you want, provided you have the time and commitment to do it. Or you can just give Bethesda money in the Atomic Shop and skip some of that grind. Let's move on to the gameplay. Confession time, I'm not a huge fan of Bethesda games, or the Fallout series. I do enjoy the lore, but the combat and the inventory systems turn me off every time I play them. And I did beat Fallout 3, 4, and New Vegas, I just hated doing it. Fallout games are first-person shooters, and you would think that as a shooter, the shooting part would be the best aspect of the game. But combat in Fallout games are the weakest point of it. The guns are terrible, they aim poorly, even when you upgrade them. They always feel underpowered, and their ammo clips run dry too quickly. Look, I understand that a Call of Duty gun with an ammo clip of 75 and having thousands of extra rounds is unrealistic. I get it. But it does make the gameplay enjoyable. Shooting a pistol in Fallout 76 with 6 rounds and a long, multi-second reload means that every fight is a slog. And it doesn't help that ammo is generally scarce, although you will pick up a lot of it from dead bodies, but many times you need multiple clips to kill each enemy. Sometimes I'll be shooting at an enemy and unload multiple clips on them in the head, shooting away slowly at their health. What the hell is wrong with these guns? They also run out of durability incredibly fast, requiring either a workbench to repair or a rare, costly repair kit that can only be attained from the Atomic Shop. Oh, now I get it. The Atomic Shop. That's why guns and armor run out of durability so fast. That's why your inventory fills out quickly and you can't fast travel to a new location and you need to use a scrap box to reduce your weight or purchase a magic potion from the Atomic Shop to temporarily increase your carry limit. That's why caps are so hard to earn, with weapons only giving you a few at a time when you sell them, and vendors have strict limits on the amount of caps they have in their inventory. The Atomic Shop. Once you realize that the Atomic Shop is the thing keeping Fallout 76 lucrative and updated, you can't help but see the design decisions that went into encouraging you to go there. Scrap boxes, repair kits, weight limits, cosmetics, camp items, emotes, extra camp slots, more special loadouts, food and water. Everything you need is in the Atomic Shop. I'll give you an example. My pistol that I used most of the game would break after a few combat encounters. I never had enough screws or adhesive to repair my items, even though I scrapped everything, meaning that repair kits were often my only way to repair my equipment. Also, I really couldn't switch out my guns a lot since my carry limit was low and I could only have a couple guns on me at a time. So, I was forced to buy repair kits from the shop. To be fair, they are pretty cheap, and the game does give you enough free credits to purchase some stuff, but it's never really enough. If they got rid of the durability on equipment, up your carry limit, and reduce the amount of food and water you need to consume, I'm convinced that this game would be better, but the amount of money they earn would plummet. There's no easy way to say this. The UI in this game is shit. I hate Bethesda's UI in every game they make. In their most recent game, Starfield, it was the most bearable, but even then it was pretty bad. Fallout 76 is a step backwards. Just a list of items broken into sections. Need a specific holo or note? Good luck finding that quickly. Run out of ammo for a weapon and want to switch to another one that you didn't favorite or use before? Open up your Pip-Boy mid-combat and look at the weapons tab and hope that you didn't pick up too many before. The combat in the Fallout series has never been good. Part of that problem lies with the weapons. Their inaccuracy, their low damage output, and their small ammo clips with scarce ammo pickups. But a larger problem is with the enemy design. You have humanoid enemies like the Scorch that stand and shoot at you, but they are small and can be hard to hit at a distance, and often they blend into the ground at times. The super mutants are similar, although they are some of the best designed enemies in the game since they're huge and easy to hit. But it's the melee enemies that suck and make combat frustrating. You want to be able to see and shoot an enemy, but a lot of the creatures in Fallout are really fast moving compared to your character, or they're really small and they close in on you far too quickly. That means you're trying to shoot something that's close to you, often below your eye level or even behind you. That's why Fallout introduced VATS. It would stop time and give you a moment to assess the situation and shoot an enemy in a specific place. But Fallout 76 is obviously online and you can't pause or freeze the game. So VATS becomes an auto-aim, and it's actually pretty good, except that enemies don't pause or freeze, meaning they continue to circle around you or close on your position, and your screen is just trying to spin around and find them. Also, it doesn't last very long since it's tied to your AP or your stamina. I would often find that VATS was kind of useless. The enemy would get close and go off screen. I would try to move my thumbstick to look at them, but touching the right thumbstick targets a different body part, not turn the screen, so I wouldn't even be able to hit them. And if you're overburdened, which you will most likely be in any dungeon or combat encounter since you're going to be picking up stuff to scrap and repair your items, you can't use VATS because you don't have AP because moving drains it when you're encumbered. Combat in Fallout needs to be redesigned if they ever come out with Fallout 5. It won't happen because Bethesda will just release another Fallout nearly exactly like the one before, but honestly it does need an overhaul. Design enemies different, fix the UI, and fix the guns. This has been a fairly long video and I'm going to end it here. My answer to the question, is Fallout 76 worth playing in 2024, is yes, as long as you're a fan of Fallout 3 and 4. If you were frustrated or didn't like those games, then Fallout 76 doesn't reinvent the wheel. But what is most important is that it's less of a broken mess than it was 6 years ago. I mean, it's still kind of broken at times, for sure, and a significant portion of it is certainly messy, but it's not unplayable. I had a lot of fun with Fallout 76, particularly in the first dozen or so hours. Leaving the vault and exploring Appalachia is a great experience, and fans of the Fallout series should check it out. A final note, the community in Fallout 76 is just incredible. I had so many positive encounters with players in the world. They would wave and emote, they would give me items and help me out when they saw that I was a new player to the game. You can explore their camps without any problem, use their workbenches, their beds, whatever else they have. I never once had a negative experience with another player, and that's an incredible accomplishment for an online game. Just for the community alone, I suggest you play this with a microphone or in a party. So I'm the Casual Console Gamer, and thanks for watching my review. Make sure to subscribe for more content and leave a like in the video if you enjoyed it. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next review.